Hello and welcome to a new video. Today we'll talk about the interview, what happened, because one of my most viewed videos is about um, the QA interview, let's say, but some people complain about the background music, and I've thought, since I've already started to edit my videos with DaVinci Resolve, as you can already see on the screen, I'm still working on um, noise reduction and removing other interference and making a better audio quality overall. I thought to myself, okay, well, let's redo this one, but in a different tone. So I'm gonna remove the background noise. I'm gonna adjust all the audio levels and make it sound a lot better. But first, before I get into it, what happened? Because as most of you know, at the beginning of the year, the pandemic arrived. Yes, so the corona. What changed? What changed during this time? Of course, many of the IT companies started losing some projects. There weren't so many interviews overall. People are still in an uncertain situation, let's say. But I can say that some companies, including one I'm working for, started interviewing again. We're still hiring. Well, we still have new projects and we're gathering new people. So how did that affect the previous video where I explained how the whole process changed? Well, it's pretty easy. What changed in IT, like for everybody? Everybody starting working from home. I mean, everybody, like everybody. Nobody's at the office, only the IT guys that really need to support some servers or I don't know, debug some laptops or some hardware issues if there are any. So yeah, let's say for the interview, because this is the topic of the video, the QA interview changed in the matter that everything is done online. It's on Zoom, Google Meet, or whatever tool you want to use. It's moved online, so you're not face to face with the interviewer, let's say with the candidate, but everything is online. What are the goods and the bads from my point of view? Well, the bad thing is you don't really have that option to give an exercise. For example, in the interviews, I usually write down on a piece of paper some exercise and then I give it to the candidate and I let him solve that exercise, so I can see how he reacts, how he thinks, and how he tries to solve this issue. Other than that, what changed is the interaction. Since now you're using a PC, most of the people are comfortable to share their video, but some of them don't. And what I've seen in a few interviews that I've been so far, people start to look up on Google while they're in interview with you. You can see them typing, searching for something. That's really bad. Don't do that. If you don't know the answer to a question, just say you don't know. You don't need to Google. You don't need to try to act like someone else or just to interpose like you're something better. Just be yourself, show what you know, and that's it. I think that's the only advice. Just be yourself, and it's an interview. It's not a evaluation. You're not being, let's say, you're not being evaluated for the present. It's just an interview. The people want to know how much knowledge do you have from the QA domain, let's say, either if it's manual, automation, or QA lead, or whatever, QA technical coordinator, whatever the position you are applying to. So enjoy this one, and don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and drop a comment down below with how is it in your company? Are the interviewers back up? Have you been in an interview recently? Thanks for watching. Bye. The interview schema or the interview is going to be presented to the candidate, which means, okay, as you see here, I've prepared a list of how this is going to go, how the interview is going to flow. So we're gonna introduce ourselves, we're gonna let you talk about your career, we're gonna have some theoretical questions, then we're gonna have some practical exercises, then we're gonna have some logical questions, and last but not least important, feedback. Do you have any questions? Can we help you with anything? Okay, let's get right into it. The theoretical questions. Okay, usually most people do the same. I've been in several interviews with several people, and I can tell you that this is a general rule. Most of the QA interviews will start with types of testing, but this is not a easy question. Let's just say not only types of question: functional, non-functional, black box, white box, gray testing. I don't know. This is beyond a specific term. This is a more general, like functional, non-functional. This can elaborate so much. That's why it's really important that you read at least OfficialQaGuy foundation glossary before you go to an interview, or if you're thinking of a QA position, then you should at least consider looking into the OfficialQaGuy glossary and documentation. Okay, now let's move on. One of the most common question that people usually get is about bugs or test cases. This depends on the experience. You have to understand that there is no general set of rules. Okay, we're gonna ask each candidate the same questions, or we're gonna go through the same pattern, and so on. This depends a lot on the experience of the candidate. For example, if I go to a senior, I will not ask him questions like, okay, what's a bug, or how would you put a test case. I will ask him what kind of tools did he use for bug tracking, or did they set the priority or the severity of the bugs, or stuff like that are more complex. You have to understand that all these questions have different level of, for example, different level. I think this is enough. If you think in the QA, you have junior position, you have mid position, and you have senior. You have to understand that questions are somehow related to these. So for a more junior colleague, I'm gonna ask the most basic questions and see where he reached, or at least to get a feeling how much information did he already manage to understand. Okay, and this is the first. Next, besides the questions of OfficialQaGuy testing, bug test cases, priority, severity, types of testing, we're gonna go into a more deeper look. Like, for example, I need to understand what did he tackle. I mean, what kind of operating system did he use? As you can see, I'm already okay. This is better now. Operating system. Yeah, I was here. What kind of operating system did he use? I mean, this would go further on, like, sorry for the bad writing, Windows, Linux, you got the idea. And this can be really short questions, and depending on his or her experience, this can elaborate. For example, how do you find the IP on Windows or Linux? How do you, I don't know, change the IP? How do you make a directory? How do you, for example, in Linux, let's say you're on a backend team and you have to debug some logs. How do you search something in the logs? This is just some basic questions I'm just thinking, but this can be elaborated pretty much like, where do you find the registry, or maybe what do you see in the event viewer. This can go on and on, but we're not gonna insist too much in these questions. Let's move on. Browser used.
For browser use, we are mostly interested in, for example, does he know what's a cache, what's a cookie for a browser, what's the meaning between HTTP and HTTPS, what's a security certificate, and stuff like that. I'm not really going to give you the answer to all these questions because you can Google these yourself, but I'm just going to go through each step by step. Okay, last and not least, I'm gonna go through the IP/DNS. Most common question that I put is, okay, you go into browse and you type, I don't know, www.google.com. How does your PC know how to map that address to the Google server? Okay, just think about it. Or for example, how do you find the IP? I already talked, but you know, what's the IP? What's IP? This is just some basic questions. What can also be added here? I'm gonna write here, for example, DB. For DB, you can go like, let's say, okay, if he has some experience with databases, we're going to need to know what kind of databases that he used, SQL, Oracle, Mongo, and so on. Maybe he knows some differences between them, and also that's enough for now. Maybe if we still are here at theoretical questions, we can ask questions like, what's a primary key, or what's a foreign key for a table, and stuff like that, so we can get a better feeling, so we know the practical exercises are going to be based on the theoretical questions. The level that answers that he gives us, maybe we can choose some more experienced exercises, experienced in the meaning that are more complicated. Okay, with scratched TP, let's go through some of the automation questions. Here, let's say some of the most common questions are about the OOP principles, and in the brackets I wrote API. What does this mean? I'm gonna leave you to think for a few seconds. Okay, did you figure it out? No? Okay, I will explain this. This is one of the easiest way that I use to remember the OOP principles, object-oriented programming principles. That's what OOP stands for, and we're gonna go through them. API means from A stands for abstract, P for polymorphism, I for inheritance, and E for encapsulation. I'm not going to explain them because, yeah, everybody can just Google this and find the answer on themselves. Okay, next, what is a class or an object? Again, I'm not going to detail. Selectors type of objects. Here I was referring to not necessarily type of objects. I think this was bad naming from my part. I'm referring to types of data types. For example, string, boolean, integer, and stuff like that. And besides this, there are many automation questions, but I'm not gonna continue on this subject. Okay. Okay, let's move on. This was just the theoretical part and the questions and the introduction. This usually doesn't take that much. It depends. For me, I prefer to have this not so much time of the interview, so this can be structured not to take such a long time, because I want to focus more on the exercises and on the logical questions, and you're gonna understand why in just a few seconds. For example, let's start with the practical exercises that I do. One of the most common exercises that I do is about an accountant app. Okay, and I'm gonna be writing it right here. Okay, so we have just a few seconds. Let me write this down. We have some intervals, and depending on the value the input gets, we get 5% increase. Then you have 26 to 50, you get 10%. Then you get 50 to 75, you get 15%, and 75 to 76 to 100, you get 20%. Okay, and while we're still here, this is the input and this is the output, let's say, and we have another button here which is here and it says calc. Okay, ignore the bad handwriting and poor drawing skills. But what I want you to focus in, this is one of the accountant app that I usually use for my interviews, and I'm gonna be focusing on this for a few minutes and I'm gonna explain why. First thing I do is, okay, these are the specs. Please try to read the specs, of course, and then try to elaborate how would you test this. Okay, I'm gonna leave you just a few seconds to think, or let's say 1 minute. Okay, I'm back. So, did you find anything? I'm gonna change the color to be more obvious. Oh, okay. Most of you already noticed that we have here 50 and 50. This is a usually mistake that I do on purpose just to see if he actually read the specification and if he was careful to notify all these things. Second, what I want to find from the candidate is how he is going to test all these. Okay, how would you test this? Okay, did you figure it out? Okay, let me help you with this. Of course, most of you who already are in the QA domain, you already know that this is a boundary. And of course, you need to test the limits of each interval, which means, for example, let's take this one. How would you test this one? Or let's just put it here. I would test -1 and 0 and 1 and the value in between, let's say 12, then 24, 25, sorry for the bad handwriting, and 26. I think this is the least number of values you need just to validate this interval. Of course, you can take more than one value from the interval, not only 12, 1, and 24, but if you read about boundary, you will understand why. And this applies to all the intervals specified. Okay, next question from my part would be, oh, sorry, let me use the brush to clean this out. Okay, fill solid color, white. Okay. Now let's get back to business. Next thing. You have the intervals, you validate the intervals. What do you do next? What do you test? what I'm expecting and what I'm also suggesting, that these exercises are not really focused on you solving. It's more like helping the interviewer get a better understanding of how you think, how would you test, or how is your mindset as a tester. And let's start. So how would I test? Besides the intervals, I would have to test this application, of course. I will put no value and just hit calc and see what happens. I would put negative values. I would put, I don't know, let's say letters, special characters, anything you can think of that is not already in the specified value that can break the application. Besides this, let's just say that the input is limited to 3 characters. How would you test this? Of course, everybody will try to write 1111, and the 4th one will not be accepted because there is a limitation in the UI. But okay, how can you really test them? So there is another method how you can test this limitation and ignore the UI input. That is input limit. Okay, that did you already figure it out? Okay, it's copy paste. You go to a different, I don't know, document or Excel, and you copy a text that is longer than 4 characters, and you go paste it. And if it inserts in the field, then it's a problem, because you should be limited to not only input but also pasting more than the limit of the characters. Okay, what I wanted to focus on so far was the test case creation. How would you create test cases? How would you validate this? And now let's move on to next part. As you can see here, I've already made a few notes. So second would be web testing. How? Okay, but how would you do that? Well, how I present this exercise is, let's just say this accountant tab is in web page, let's say web page, and let's say you put a correct value and you click calc button, but nothing happens. What do you do next? What I'm expecting from the candidates and how would I solve this, of course, is going into console to see if there's anything, and if there is no error or anything, you can just besides the console, when hitting inspector F12, you can also see multiple tabs there. One of the tabs that I'm referring to is network. Here you can see requests and response for each action that you do in the browser, because each action and you do in the browser is a request to a server. So this is what I was referring, web testing, and now we're also starting to cover API. Okay, as an API, what I'm referring here is, of course, the whole request response communication. I want to know if the candidate knows about all this. I also want to know what happens when he does a request, what he expects. Of course, we gotta go through the API, types of API. If he knows, then I need to understand that he is also familiar with status codes. What is 200, what is 404, what is 500. For those of you that are not really familiar, 200 success, 404 not found. There can be a lot more, and also what is really specific to the server, because this is a communication from client to server. The client makes a request. The client in this case is the application. The browser makes a request to the server, which is in the backend somewhere, and that server responds with a response to the client. Okay, in this case, when you get nothing back, at least in the UI, it means that something broke. So you have to investigate the request and response and check to see what kind of error code did you get and what kind of response did you get. Because perhaps there is a status code or an error that is not really handled by the client. Okay, now let me just clear this out just a few seconds. I don't have such stable hands, but let me see. Okay, this is good. One of the questions that I still have here and also applies is if this is an accountant app or something that is used by a bank, let's say, how would you really test this? I mean, how would you know this is a secure application to use? First of all, you have to look at the link. The link has to be with HTTPS, which means the connection is secured on also in the Chrome link bar, let's say, or how do you want to call it? There has to be a small lock on the left side, which is the secure certification, which means that the connection between the client and the server is secured. This is really mandatory for most websites these days because the whole data privacy is really a sensitive subject. Okay, mostly that's it. I can still elaborate on this. It depends on the level and the candidate. You have to understand this is not a standard. For example, until I wipe this all out, I will explain what I'm referring to. For example, there seems to be no error in the response from the server. Then you need to look at the server. Well, where do you look on the server? Of course, the server keeps some logs, so you have to look at the logs on the server. Maybe something crashed, or I don't know, something happened with the server that could not retrieve a response for the request you made, and so on. These exercises can be shown or can be used with different type of apps. This accountant app is just, it's not really an accountant app, it's actually a rate calculator or generator, how do you want to call it. Okay, let's move on to the DB exercise. Let's say you have two tables. Again, bad writing, sorry. Okay, and you have first column ID and name. Nope, I'm gonna use something different. Let me just rephrase. ID and grade. Grade. Okay. And this here we will have, let's just type it, I think it's easier. 1 and grade 5, 2 and grade 6, 3 and grade 9, and you can you get the point. 4 and grade 8, 5 and grade 10, 6 and grade 7, and so on. Okay, let's move on to the next table. This is one of the tables that contains ID and grade, and the second table, I'm gonna make it bigger so you'll understand in a few seconds. We're gonna have ID, they're gonna have name, then we're gonna have surname and subject. Let me just arrange this so it's better visible when I draw the table. Okay, the name 1 John, surname Wick, subject Maths, ID name 2, name I don't know Adele, Smith, subject can be English, Okay, and also you have here grade ID. Let me just clear this up. I think I can make it bigger. Okay, this is better. 1, 2, and I think you already got the point. Let me just draw the table. Of course, my bad handwriting. Usually I have this like some templates and I just present them to the candidate so it's much easier for him to see. Let me just do this for here. Yeah, it's gonna be easier for you to see. Just wait. And great. Okay. Just 1 second. Okay. Now, so you have these 2 tables. This is the let's say grades. Oh, bad handwriting. And this is the, let's say, students. Okay, I'm not gonna ignore this. Sorry for the background. Students. Okay, and for example, as I mentioned, this is a DB exercise. So one of the most common exercise that I use is starting from the simple select. For example, I'm gonna say, please make a query or tell me how would you select the student with the name John. And the typical select would be select all from students being the table name we are looking for, where name equals John. This is a simple select. You just select the name John because you can have multiple students with name John, so that's why you do select all. Second, if you want to elaborate this exercise, I'm gonna go through the join, or let me just explain. First, I usually, if I didn't cover the primary key and the foreign key in the theoretical questions, I'm gonna do it here. For example, I'm gonna ask for student tables, what is the primary key and what is the foreign key. I'm gonna explain why. Because here you can already see the mappings. The primary key is a unique key for a table, and the foreign key is the key from a table that maps a primary key from a different table. In this case, if you look in the students table, we have a grade ID because here we don't have grades, and this grade ID is mapped to grade ID from here. So John Wick in the subject maths has grade 5. Okay, so this can be really elaborated from here. For example, we can also ask about what types of join do you know? Inner join, left join, right join, and the other one, there are 4 types. Let me just wipe this out for the next exercise. Mostly this is it for the DB. Everybody wants to see if you know how to make an SQL, if you know how to make a query, a simple select. Sorry, it's late and I'm stuttering. Okay, let me just clean this up. Sorry for the... Let me see if I can... No outline. Oh, okay, there you go. There you go. Okay. We also did this. Okay, practical exercises. These are for automation. How do you print a list? You can use a for, or depending on the language you use, you can also list print, or depending on what methods that language contain. Also here we have print only even numbers. I want to know how much information does he know about automation, not necessarily a specific language, but mostly about syntax, about concepts, about principles, about everything that can be used in a real life scenario. We're not going to go through this because this can be really long exercises. What I really want to emphasize here is also it's a good practical exercise, but this only refers to mostly junior colleagues with not so much experience in the QA. One of the funniest exercises that I've also heard and also used a few times, but not so often, is how do you teach an alien to wash his teeth? Okay, how do you teach an alien to wash his teeth? Well, let me write this down. How do you teach an alien to wash his teeth? I'm gonna write this down so in case my English is not so good, you can really see. So, what do you need? First of all, you need toothbrush, toothpaste, water to clean yourself after. You need a hand. Do you need anything else? With hand, you pick the toothbrush, you put toothpaste, you need water, and then you need to explain the motion. The motion, I'm referring brushing top to bottom, side to side, or just think about it. When somebody asks you this, what do you think of? It's really easy for you because you already know these principles and this has been a habit to you from since you were taught as a little child, but now you're faced with a question that not everybody has the potential, or not necessarily the potential. It's not about potential. It's about not that everybody thinks of all the things you need to teach an alien to wash his teeth. Okay, let's move on. Next, I think there are so many practical exercises that it's clear I'm not gonna get into all of these in 1 hour. Let's just say, as you already noticed, this takes, I'm gonna just make a note here. Time. Oh no, I'm gonna use something else. I'm gonna use 3 terms. I'm gonna use small, medium, and large. I'm gonna use here large time. For example, the theoretical questions can be different, but I'm gonna go with medium / large time. And of course, we still have here, let the candidate talk about himself. This can be small, medium time. When I'm talking small, medium time, when let the candidate talk about his or her career, there are some candidates that really want to elaborate most of their career, but you should know and you should be aware of a subtle tactic that you can interrupt and focus him to the things that you are really interested, because you are targeting somebody for a specific position most of the time, so you know what you're looking for. You're gonna focus your questions in that direction. I'm not gonna ask all these questions for each candidate because it's not gonna be enough time for each question, but you're gonna focus on these parts. Okay, and of course we still have present themselves. Let's be small, tiny. Let me just I will use this because it doesn't work. Okay, this is large time, and we get to the bottom part. This is usually small, medium time. It depends. The whole interview can take from let's say 1 hour to 2 hours or 1.5 hours. It usually depends on the candidate, on the level of knowledge he has, and the type of the questions the interviewers want to be focused on, because there can be several type of questions you want to ask, and if you're targeting for a specific position, then you're gonna focus on that area a lot, so you can extend a lot of theoretical questions in that area. And of course there are so many questions that I didn't even write here. For example, in the theoretical questions, types of testing, did you do any mobile, web, or desktop? If you did mobile, what? Android or iOS? What type of extension does the Android have? What type of extension does the iOS have? How do you install? How do you uninstall? Versioning? This can go on and on and on. It's a really long discussion, but I wanted to focus only to some questions. And of course, as I always mentioned, this is depending on the level of the experience the candidate has. And now let's move on to my favorite part. My favorite part of the interview is the logical question. For this, I selected 3 most common exercises that I use, and I'm gonna break down each and every one of them. Okay, first of all, we're gonna tackle the first problem, which is the light in the room. This is the room, this is the light, this is the door. And you are here. And you have here 3 switches. Okay, and I'm gonna write here, you are only allowed to enter 1 time in the room. You need to find the correct switch for the light in the room. The room has no windows. This is really important because most of the candidates will say, okay, you just look out the window, but there is no window. I'm gonna go straight to the answer, of course, because I don't want to spend so much time in explaining this or just detailing. I will explain how I solved it the first time. As you know, when this problem was entered in the logical question circle, let's just say there were no LED lights. So this is easier. I'm going to explain why. Because LED lights don't get heat up. Regular light bulbs heat up when they are switched on for a few seconds, let's say. So how I thought I would solve this, of course, I would go and start this switch and then wait. I'm gonna write, sorry for everything, I'm gonna go step by step. Start switch 1 and wait 5 minutes. Second, this is gonna be step by step. Stop switch 1 and start switch 2 and enter the room. By now, if you enter the room, if you enter and the light is on, then switch 2 is correct. Yeah, not correct, but the right answer. I'm gonna go with correct. If you enter and the light is off, check the light bulb if it is heated. If yes, then switch 1 is correct. If you entered and the light is off and the light bulb is cold, then switch 3 is correct. Okay, so this is the answer to the question. I'm gonna let you read for a few seconds and then we'll continue with the next one. So it wasn't that hard, right? Okay. Good. Let's move on to exercise number 2. In exercise number 2, you have okay, I'm gonna draw them by hand because it really let me just clean this up. Okay, I said I'm gonna draw them by hands. So you have 9 balls. Okay, the specs I'm gonna write in a second, but just the hand drawing, please ignore that. Okay, let's discuss. This is one of the most known question after the one with the switches. You have 9 balls with the same shape and color, but one of them is heavier than the rest. You can use the scale, but only 2 times to find the ball that is heavier. Okay, this is the spec. Just think about it. How would you solve this? Before solving it, I'm gonna show you how most of the candidates do it, and then we'll just go to the solution. Well, of course you have 9, so everybody thinks like comparing 4 to 4 as a first comparison, and you have 1 besides. If these are equals, this is your solution, but this is not 100% accurate. This is not the correct solution. They start by thinking, okay, 4 with 5, but of course the 5 is gonna be heavier. So they are really stuck. This is how most people start, and then they're stuck. There is a correct solution, because of course you cannot go 5 and 5 because you only have 9. So what do you do next? You went 5 and 5, you went 4 and 4, then you can only go 3 and 3. Why? Because if these two are equals, you have another group of 3 that is besides. So let me just write this down so it's easier to see. You scale 2 groups, 3 ovals, and then you have a different scenario. Scenario number 1, if the 2 groups are equals, then the third group is important. I will write important if one of the groups is heavier, that is important. And step number 2, now we have a group of 3 balls that contain the one with the heavier ball, and you already have used one scale. You have one more and 3 balls. Step number 3, scale 1 and 1 ball, which means I think most of you already got it. If both are equal, the one sitting besides is the heavier. And 4, if the one of the 2 is heavier, of course, that is the ball we are looking for. Okay, did you got it? Not so hard, right? It's just a matter of thinking and logical thinking, and I'm gonna tell you, in these exercises we don't really look for the solution, because you may have done these exercises in your free time, or you went to different interviews and you already solved this with somebody else. But we're trying to see how would you solve, how do you try, and this is the most important part. Don't stop trying. I mean, you have to give your best, because candidates need to show their creativity and their perseverance and their thinking, which is really important for us, the interviewers. Okay, and the last, logical questions. I'm gonna write this down first. You have 2 bottles, one of 3 liters and one of 5 liters. You have enough water and you need to measure 4 liters. Okay, I will let you think about this. Five liters. Okay, you have the 3 liter, you have the 5 liter, and you need to measure 4 liters. How would you do this? This problem usually has 2 solutions. First, you can use the 3 liter bottle. How? Well, fill, okay, and put the 5 liters, then 3-liter bottle. I'm writing bottle wrong, sorry for that. Fill and put again in the 5 liters. You have 1 liter in the 3-liter bottle. Okay. 4. Empty the 5-liter bottle and put 1 liter from the 3-liter bottle. Fill the 3-liter bottle again and then put it in the 5-liter bottle, which now gains results 4 liters of water in the 5-liter bottle. Okay, was it really hard? Just think about it. I was saying that this problem has 2 solutions. I'm gonna write you only this one because I want you to look for yourself and find the other one, okay? If you really think, if you watch the movies, this problem was also in Die Hard. I don't remember which Die Hard, but when they were at the fountain and then there was a bomb and they had to defuse the bomb with exactly solving this problem. They need to put 4 liters of water on the scale so the bomb won't explode. But you can look it up, it's really nice. This always reminds me of that movie. Okay. Let me just clean this up. Okay. And with this we conclude the logical questions. I think this was all from the interview. That's really important to mention. Of course, there are some different types of interviewers that like to add some more questions in the beginning or like to structure their interview in a different manner, not necessarily asking theoretical questions and then practical exercises and then logical questioning, but most of the interviewers do it like this, but there is also another way that I've seen and also done it sometime. For example, when they let the candidate talk about his or her career, they may interrupt him and also add, for example, okay, you say you've used Jira for bug tracking. What is a bug? What do you put in a bug? And stuff like that. Or did you also set priority and severity for the bug? So you kind of get the feeling. So they tend to put their theoretical questions inside the discussion about his or her, the candidate's career. This is more friendly and doesn't seem so robust, and it's not something programmatic, or let's say it's more friendly to the candidate, because the whole interview is like a discussion and it tends to make people feel let's say not so scared, or I don't know, feel like an interrogation. Exactly, interrogation. This was the word that I was looking for. And besides this, also one of the last section is feedback. Do you have any questions? How did you find this interview? Was it hard? Was it too long? Too short? What would have you changed? What did you would do different if you would have that option? And one of the, I don't know, let's say this is one of the most important things, because you as an interviewer, you also get to learn stuff from the feedback section. One of the important things that I've learned from the first interviews where I've been was the fact that people need to get their answer. So, for example, if I would give you an exercise with the, I don't know, let's go here, with a 3 and 5 liter water bottles, and I would give you, I don't know, I would let you 5 minutes to solve it, and you didn't find the solution after 5 minutes, then I would have said, okay, let's move on. This is not okay. You need to explain or at least give some hints so the candidate can try to debug the question and also solve it. If he really doesn't get the hang of it and you see that time is passing, you're not gonna let him stay like, I don't know, 15 minutes for solving one logical question, because it's not logical from wasting your time and his time at the same time. So you're gonna help him. And I suggest to everybody, help your candidates solve the question or answer the question, at least go home with the correct answer to a question. Also, if you consider that I mentioned something wrong in this video, just drop a comment, and last but not least, don't forget, like, share and subscribe. Thank you.